is a UK-based fintech company. Just before we get started, can we do a quick show of hands, please? Who here is from a bank? Okay, it's a few. Who here is from a company they would call a fintech? Okay, a couple, yeah. So I guess the rest of you are from Western Union or something, coming to spy, so that's fine. Just kidding. So Transferwise, what do we do? Well, we do online international money transfers between bank accounts. So if you want to send money from one country to another, we provide that as a service. Faster, cheaper, more convenient than a bank would. I want to just touch on today kind of a bit about who we are, how we've grown, a little bit on speed, and touching on partnerships between fintechs and banks, okay? So Transferwise was started to solve a problem. These are our founders, Tarvet and Christo and Tarvet there. And they both Estonian, but were living in London. Christo was being paid in pounds, but needed to pay his mortgage in Estonia in euros. Tarvet was being paid in euros, but needed pounds in London to fund his living there. So every month they were going down to the bank, spending a whole bunch of money on cross-border international SWIFT fees and huge FX margins and all kinds of hidden costs there. So they started exchanging money with themselves, topping up each other's local bank accounts whenever they needed to change money. They then got their friends involved in this as well, very quickly realized they were saving thousands of pounds a month and realized that millions of people around the world could do the same. So about 6 years ago now, they founded Transferwise. Our mission remains the same. We let you move your money as fast as possible for as little as possible. That's it. That's what we're trying to do. Our ultimate vision is to have money without borders, global money, where moving money around the world is instant, convenient, transparent, and ultimately free, just like an email or a WhatsApp is today. We're not quite there yet, but we're working towards it. So how have we done so far? We have over 600 members of staff, 8 countries around the world, and over 1 million customers have used us so far. We currently send money from 37 countries, and we can send to 59. So we really are reaching all around the world, truly global company now. Moving more than $1 billion of customers' money every month. And this is from transactions of $50, someone sending to their sister, to corporations moving multi-million-dollar transactions. So all types of customers now. So what has driven this growth, a bit close, is evangelism. Is customers telling their friends and families about Transferwise and getting them to use it as well. Now in financial services is often a pretty boring sector, right? Money transfer is not that exciting. As exciting as we try and make it sound, we try. So to achieve this virality, this advocacy, your product needs to be order of magnitudes time better than the alternative. You might have a 10, 20% improvement. People will still use you. But to get the advocacy, you need to be order of magnitudes times better. And we set that bar internally at 10 times. Whatever the measurement is, whether it's speed or price or cost or whatever, we should be 10 times better. When we are, we see this advocacy, this virality. So that's what we aim to do. So how do you build a product that's 10 times better? Well, we focus it around these 4 pillars. And price, speed, coverage, convenience. We don't have time to go through them all now. Price is, of course, something that's pretty unanimous with Transferwise. Coverage, you need to be in the countries where customers want to serve money, relatively straightforward. Convenience, I would love to talk loads about, but we can't. But I want to touch on speed. This is a graph I actually pulled last night from Swift's website. It's a payment flow diagram from a company in Austria to an individual in Holland, so an inter-Europe transfer. For whatever reason now, this transfer has to go through America, through banks in New York, So the one payment is going across 2 continents, 3 countries, 4 banks. And the way it works, of course, is it can only move through that train as fast as each bank along the way. So every time you increase another bank, it slows the payment down, which is why Swift transfers can take 3-4 days. Fees will be deducted along the way. You don't really know when or why or how much, and no one can tell you. So is there a better way? Well, of course. That's why we exist. So a bank I was talking to recently asked quite an interesting question. They said, can you move money faster than the speed of sound? I'm not a mathematician, so I had to go away and do some math. So thinking of being really clever and starting with the longest possible route to give us the most time, I looked at Australia to UK. Now with Transferwise, the time that should take is 1 hour. Sound takes almost 14 hours to get from Sydney to London. So not only were we already faster than sound, but 14 times quicker. But really 14 hours is quite an easy barrier to break these days, so not super impressive. So what about the shortest route we offer between UK and France? Well, actually, a few days later, I saw this tweet from a guy called Will Smith, who I hope is the real Will Smith, but I don't know if he uses us yet, saying he moved pounds to euros in 20 minutes, new record. Pretty cool. But then there was a reply from Jim, who said his Transferwise last night took 26 seconds from UK to France. Doing some very fancy maths that I had to get some help with, that's 38 times quicker than sound. So not only are we smashing the sound barrier by multiples, but we're doing it on the shortest possible routes. 26 seconds to have money from bank account in one country, converted into another currency, and deposited into another country. This is what customers are expecting, what they're asking for, what companies like Transferwise and some others are providing now. This is the bar that's being set. So this is really made possible through the faster payments network that we have in UK. It's an interbank instant payment settlement network. In 2016, we became the first non-bank institution to get direct access to this network. So we can push transactions onto the network directly ourselves, which is pretty cool. Banks, since the invention of banking, have had exclusive access to payment systems. That's starting to change. We have some big developments in Europe, PSD2, initiatives like this coming through that are really going to shake things up a little bit. We don't quite know how yet, but exciting times. But on to what I really want to talk about, bank fintech partnerships. For those of you who've been here the last couple of days, there's been lots of discussions around how, should, when, et cetera, banks and fintech partners. We work with 70, 80 or so banks around the world. So we've done this quite a lot. So I just wanted to touch on this topic. So there's been 2 main trains of thought so far. One from banks, one from fintechs. One of the arguments is banks have no time, there's lots of pressure, fintechs are coming. These are genuine quotes, by the way, from the last couple of days. Banks need to partner or it will be death by 1,000 cuts. On the other side, you have guys saying, banks have lots of time. There's no fintech who's kind of eating our dinner so far. We don't feel challenged, was one of the statements made. So if you were to look at these 2 categories and guess which one was banks, which one was fintechs, probably can guess pretty easily. But I'm actually trolling all banks. These are all comments from banks. So there's differing opinions, right? No one can quite work out how this should happen. Which leads on to the question, should banks partner with fintechs? I wanted to talk a little bit more about how this should happen, but I think we need to take a step back and say, should this happen at all? Should you partner? Should you compete? How should you approach this? So one way we often get asked this is by people saying, couldn't a bank start a service like Transferwise? Couldn't they do it themselves? Why do they need to partner with us? Yeah, sure. They have the infrastructure, they have the customers, they have the systems, they have everything they need to. But in reality, could they? Or probably a better question is should they? Banks have 100, 200, 300 different products, right? International money transfer is a pretty small part of a big bank's business, right? So why should they compete? So this is sorry to put graphs up on conference slides. I know it's super dull, but this is a very interesting one. McKinsey reckon a bank spends between 25 and 35 US dollars to process an international payment through liquidity, FX, treasury costs, operations, etc., etc. It's a lot of money. They also reckon that by 2020, to remain competitive, that number needs to drop 90 to 95% to between $1 to $2 roughly. Now, in an industry where if you make a 10, 15% cost savings, you'll probably get a nice bonus and whatever at the end of the month. 90 to 95% is just an enormous reduction in costs required on a product that's probably not considered as core. Perhaps banks, please tell me differently, but it's a relatively small part of the business. This is a slide that The Guardian published recently from Santander. Santander passed it to or someone from Santander passed it to them. Made a bit of media splash in the UK. Couple of numbers here just to call out quickly. If Santander repriced their international transfers to the level that Transferwise charge, there'd be an 84% reduction in the revenues they earn from cross-border payments. So very similar numbers to McKinsey. It's not just consultant guff. This is kind of real math. The lovely star in the middle also says that, in theory, 10% of the group's profits would be at risk if they did that. Now, the numbers are, of course, quite indicative, and there's a whole bunch of other things that need to be taken into account. So big pinch of salt required. But what was interesting and what wasn't really talked about is what's in the headline, the title of the slide. The banking model is built on cross-subsidization. New entrants can attack profitable slices without offering all the services. Or in real speak, new entrants focus on a niche and get pretty good at it. We have teams of people focusing on nothing else other than cross-border money transfers. Compliance, risk, AML, all of our policies, all of our systems are built around this one niche. Banks maybe have 200-300 IT systems, right? You can't possibly put this much time and energy into one. So why do it, right? 25 to 30% of customers, this is from, I think, UBS, have used or will use a fintech in coming 12 months. This is a global survey. I mean, regional differences, sure, but it's not something that's super niche anymore, that it's some geek sitting at the back of the corner. This is mainstream, right? Why? The reasons given: services weren't being provided, fees were too high, and moving money took too long. So the way we view it is partnerships. Makes sense. There's really no other solution that we see. Like I say, we work with 70, 80 banks probably, but I want to call out these three. Starling Bank, a UK startup bank, LHV, one of the biggest banks in Estonia, and N26, a European challenger bank in about, I think, 18 countries now. These three have taken it a step further with us, and we're built in to their native platforms. So if you log on to your banking app at LHV and select international money transfer, you actually kind of are through a almost white-labeled version of Transferwise. It sits alongside Swift, but it's another alternative to customers. So they can get the cost savings, the speed, everything they're looking for, but without leaving the app. The beauty of that, of course, is the bank keeps the customer. Stickiness remains in the app, and they keep, most importantly, the data, where that money is going, why it's being used. Absolutely crucial for banks to retain that. So these three have done it. There'll hopefully be many more to come. But these are the types of partnerships that both sides benefit from. The bank gets the revenue, but without the costs. So just to sum up then, our view, partnerships are key. Kind of end of the story from our side, right? And markets change quickly. 2-3 years ago, Transferwise was not mainstream. Probably very few of you in this room had heard of it, you know? I'm getting told time's up. Things have moved very quickly. The same will happen here. There may be banks sitting saying, we're not feeling the stress yet, but a year down the line, 2 years down the line, that can change very, very quickly. So those that act kind of now and quickly will really benefit in the long term. So last question, how many partner banks do we have in the Middle East? Just kind of about 1, maybe 2, depending on how you count, right? There should be many, many more. We are looking for partner banks in every country in this region. So if any of you have been inspired by what we've talked about over the last couple of days, fintech bank partnerships, I'm going to be around the rest of the afternoon. So come and talk. Even if it's not something maybe your bank is interested in looking at, we've done this a lot before from a fintech side. So I'm happy to talk to you guys about, maybe some best practice, how to approach this, the things to look out for both banks and fintechs, right? But again, if any of you are interested in working with Transferwise, give me a call. So onwards from here. Let's see where we get to. Thanks very much, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Naude of Transferwise.